All right, guys, welcome back. Episode frickin' 10. Let's get
We're
it.
at it. Double digits,
The
man.
Market Matters podcast. You got Sam, got Chris, and obviously we actually got a special guest. He's actually usually behind the camera.
Yeah.
And we figure we bring him out because he knows some things that we don't, and maybe we can open some dialogue today. But first, let's bring you over to the market update
Yeah.
with Mr.
So
Chris.
let's jump into the market data as always, guys. Hopefully you can see me with this boom mic. Maybe I'll turn it here. As always, we like to go over the Sacramento, El Dorado, and Placer counties. We're here in lovely Northern California. So we're still in the spring market. So let's jump into some stats about now that we're in the first of May. That's nice. Our
Yeah.
podcast falls right on the 1st. So we get
May
to look
1st.
at all of April, right, and compared to month to date. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
jump into that. So April compared to March, we'll do that, right? So for sale was at 1683 versus 1610, so it was up about 5%.
Very good.
Yep. So
like
going
to
up
see
a
it.
little bit. As far as sold though, we're down 13%.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
also have a theory again on that.
Yeah, yeah. And then pending was up to about 12%.
Nice.
So
Okay.
what's your theory? Let's hear it.
So, as we knew, remember when the pendings were mad high?
Yeah.
So, big thing was the Dream for All program, that 20% down payment assistance. I don't know if you remember when you were behind the camera, but it was that like crazy program I was telling you about. It was going nuts, and they discontinue it. They're saying that it might come back because there's inevitable contracts being fallen out. And I think that might be one of the reasons why.
I think so.
What the biggest thing that as a loan officer, I couldn't do in good faith, but I know a lot of other loan officers did, and I understand why. But a lot of loan officers locked loans in prior to that actual official launch date. And when you do that, that's showing that you're committing a certain amount of money to that borrower. So say, for instance, you lock your loan and it ended up not going through, then that money is committed, but it's not being used.
Right.
So I think a lot of fallen out contracts and not doing proper due diligence on what the programs entails, et cetera. So I think there was a lot of fallout from that program. So I think I'm guessing probably in the next 3 weeks, we'll probably hear some sort of like reopening of that program for like a short, I'm not even putting hope out there.
Right.
Mainly because it's going to be open for another 3 days and then it'll be done. Like
yeah,
that.
it's super.
Because it's like there's
the
no-
original is gone so
Right.
quick.
So like what I'm doing though with like my clients that are interested is I'm just running them through that My Home program.
Yeah.
Because they follow the same underwriting guidelines. So I'm putting them through those programs, and if something pops up, then obviously I'm going to lock that loan because if you can qualify for that, you're going to qualify for a larger down payment. 'Cause your
Yeah.
payment's going to be lower, right?
Right.
So yeah, so that's what we're doing, but I think that's one of the reasons why. And yeah, I like to see that we're getting more supply, but it's not as much as we like. But
Sure.
it's
sure.
just, man, that's gonna hold value as supply just stays low. It's just, I'm not seeing a big decline. I had a buddy actually I haven't talked to in a little while. He's a business owner himself. He's 25, but he does trailers. And he was asking, I was like, so I'm just curious, how are things going? And when is this crash happening? Because I'm going to buy. I'm like, well, dude, I don't really see this crash
Yeah.
coming. Like,
You're like, what?
I
What
wish,
crash?
like, I
Yeah.
honestly, like, I kind of wish, like, there would be a chance, like, not wishing on anyone having an upside down mortgage.
Sure.
Regardless, it doesn't really matter because your payment's fixed. However, it's in terms of like people want to crash as they want to see a lot lower in price points. They want to be able to get something.
People that want to get in.
get a deal. Everyone wants a deal.
Right.
But when you have average rates at 4% across the nation, you're not going to have a lot of defaults. You're not going to have a lot of sold. So it's just, it is what it is with the supply. But it's a good thing for the people that are current homeowners. And if you're a buyer, there's still opportunities. Supply is lower, but there's still enough for where a buyer can come in and still negotiate because there's still not a ton of buyers, but it's enough to support the demand, but it's nothing crazy.
Right.
So I'd like to say it's very healthy. Sellers are willing to negotiate and the buyers are as well, which I like.
I do too. I think the whole theme of 2023 and the latter half of 2022 has just been moved to normalization, right? This kind of trying to move towards this equilibrium of we're not crashing, we're just
Taking a deep breath,
yes,
deep
exactly.
sigh. Like, okay.
We went from insane to okay, let's
It's like, all right.
so
Simmer down. Now
yeah,
we can
right.
Take our time and look at homes and look at other products instead of just a standard
Exactly.
conventional loan and put as much money as we could possibly
Right,
can.
right. And I think, it's like people have to put that into perspective where it's like, okay, you want a deal, everyone does, totally get that. But I think where the market is heading is a lot better than where we're at, where people are paying
Well,
30,
above
40,
over.
50, 60 grand above asking and not even seeing the property in some cases, which is just like, wow, just
Yeah, I feel like we're a broken
really living
record
by
on
the
that
seat of your
front.
pants there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still can't believe it. I'll say it. I've said it tons of times again. It's like on episode 10, I probably said it about 6 out of the 7 or 6
Yeah.
out of 10 of them. So it's like,
Yeah.
but
We won't beat
it's-
the dead horse here, but
no, but yeah, I also, when it comes to market update, I have a couple things. Rates, they haven't fluctuated a whole lot. They have, unfortunately, they've been on a minor upward trend, nothing crazy. For all those people that are pinpointing May 1st or May 10th or May whatever for a huge rate drop, stop. Stop saying that, because you're going to look like an idiot when things become very much like they are. They're staying consistent unless something big changes where the Fed says, well, we're stopping altogether rate hikes. But even then, it's not like we're going to see a huge rate drop overnight. So I don't know where people are coming from. I heard a lender report while I was up in Auburn, and they were doing their predicting. And you know me with predicting, I don't predict shit because nobody can predict. I've talked to my father, who's been in it for 40 fucking years. Sorry, I'm getting passionate. And he doesn't know. Like
Right.
all he can say is that based on the current situation with inflation, based on the current housing data, with the current employment data, there's nothing to suggest that rates are going to sharp decline. Maybe a slow trickle down to a normalization, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Because we're also seeing the new currency rollout, which we don't even know how the hell that's going to affect our business.
Yeah.
Like with the Fed now, the CBDC, it's a little nerve wracking for people in the business who are paying attention, which unfortunately a lot aren't. But that's something that I make a point to do so. That's why sometimes I'm a little tightly wound, but for good reason. I want to be able to make sure that I'm letting the people I work with know what's going on so they can inform their clients, and I can do the same.
Absolutely.
But anyways, on rates, I mean, if you're looking at a primo rate for conventional, you're like high 6, low 7s. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of situations you're in the 7s right now.
Yeah.
FHA mid to high 6, VA is going to be around the same, mid to high 6. The one thing I did want to bring up was going to be the loan level price adjustment before we start bringing Robert into the conversation. Because a lot of people, I was actually going to be putting out a reel about it, trying to get it all edited. Maybe I'll have to get your 2 cents on how good I'm doing. Gotcha. Thanks, buddy. But so loan level price adjustments, I've been seeing a lot of videos go out. A lot of news has been throwing these out saying that high credit score borrowers are getting the short end of the stick or the shit end of the stick. They're getting worse rates because of that. It's a redistribution of equity is what they're claiming it to be, the Biden administration. I think it's a bit of bullshit, but here's a good way of getting around it, because you do not need, I'm not advocating you go destroy your credit score, because you absolutely shouldn't.
Yeah.
So for one, nothing's changed on the front of the fact of the matter that you're going to be getting the best interest rate if you have a higher credit score. They've added a new adjustment to where you're going to be getting the best rates at 780 and above. So in order to, if you have one of those primo rates, I say if you're over 740, you're still in that good, really good quality credit borrower. There's going to be green and there's going to be red. And as you can see, it goes down all the way down to the low credit scores. You're going to have a lot higher of an adjustment to your interest rate. The thing that changed is it used to be a lot bigger adjustment when you were at a lower credit score. And now if you're at a higher credit score, there's a little bit more of an add-on. However, you're still getting a far better rate than anyone at 620 versus 780.
Right.
That hasn't changed.
Right.
But the best way to get around it is put less than 10% down if you're a primo credit borrower, or more than 25% down. Between 10 and 25% down, it yields you the least net benefit in terms of actually getting a rate that makes the most sense. So technically, the best interest rate you could possibly get is if you're over a 780 credit score, putting over 25% down. And then the next would be putting your minimum down, which I always recommend, especially for a first-time home buyer. Especially like for me, I mean, save your money, leverage the bank's money rather than your money.
Yeah.
And then also, it's always good to have liquid cash because we're dealing with the property right now. It's always good. It's always better to have liquid cash when you're a first-time home buyer because there's always the possibility of wanting to change things or potential repairs that may have got missed or didn't want to be taken care of within the contract itself.
Sure.
So keep that in mind. If I were, because I'm looking at it myself, when I get into this, which I'm probably going to be going with an FHA loan, is I'm going to be going with something like the minimum down payment because FHA, it's not within the same pricing qualification. It doesn't have the same loan level price adjustments. So keep that in mind. So if you're working at a conventional, just do the 3 to 5% down as a first-time home buyer. Don't freak out about needing to put 10, 15, 20 because you're kind of throwing money at the wall at that point. So just want to throw that out there. There's a way to get around it. It hasn't hurt you. It hasn't made low credit score borrowers get better rates. That would be outlandish. Then there would be protests on the street because that's not how we roll. Responsibility should be granted additional support. Because you actually did it yourself. You showed that you could be a good borrower on the smaller things. So might as well just be able to show that on the bigger things. So,
of course.
But yeah, man. Welcome to the camera side.
How's it going?
He's kind of, to the camera side. I was about to say, he's kind of always been here.
He's always been here.
You guys just haven't seen him.
He's the one that makes us look good in every single podcast. And
absolutely.
I can't tell you how many, I've had probably at least 10 people come up to me and say like, Sam, honestly, like I was honestly thinking about, looked at your podcast and I was not expecting a whole lot because usually first time podcasts are usually pretty like rough around the edges. You're kind of working around the bugs. You're kind of like audio is a little messy, not the best camera work, et cetera, et cetera. But how many people have come up to me or DM me and said it's good quality? Like it's just super good quality and I'm really impressed. I haven't got one person say this is shit. Not a single person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not.
So,
well, I appreciate all the kind comments from all the lovely viewers out there. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
And I'll shamelessly plug him for you. It's like, if he's got the time for you, if you need someone to edit some videos and give you some professional looking content, he's your guy.
Yes. Yeah. Just bring your credit card.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, I guess I wanted to ask you, so a lot of people have different various types of businesses, right? I mean, there's going to be real estate agents, there's going to be insurance agents, realtor, mortgage brokers, and there are also small business owners. So I guess if someone were to narrow in on like one type of specific content right now that's going on right now, what would you choose?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think as a business strategy, content itself is actually wholly unnecessary in most cases, and I know that's a controversial thing to say because everybody's like, "Oh, you have to make Instagram."
I agree with you, but I'll let you finish.
But for me personally, like video editing is not my only thing, right? I also do music production.
Right.
So in the pursuit of trying to get students to teach music production, I've come across a couple of strategies that it's like, well, you don't actually have to make content at all as long as you can get the conversation between like two people started just like that. Like that's the only thing.
Very similar with real estate.
Right.
Yeah. Because I mean, I know some of the biggest producers, like a great example is Kevin McDonald. He hardly posts anything on his social media, but he does great business.
Yes.
Because if your processes are in check and you're continually reaching out, making those conversations, following up on previous people that you worked with, like that's an intimate look at, that's an intimate relationship that you've created. And it's like, if I couldn't agree more. It's just, I guess the like say a small, like let's say like a small flower shop in like in Sacramento where there's a ton of flower shops. It's a big city. So what would you suggest in terms of like, based on what the algorithms are showing or based on the type of content you've been seeing people have been reacting? Because you also have your podcast and you do your own short forms and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the kind of business that you're doing. Obviously, there's a bunch of different ways of generating leads. So, talking to people person to person, obviously that's word of mouth is like the
100%.
biggest thing. That's like the classic, the go-to. But there are people who are getting really smart with it these days with things like web scrapers and just like other lead generation assets. So web scrapers essentially are a script, like a Python script, for example, that somebody wrote. and it will go through.
Act like I'm 10 years old. What's a Python script?
Python is a programming language. It's
Got it. Okay.
I do believe it's the most popular programming language right now. Maybe behind JavaScript. JavaScript's probably still number one.
I do know that.
Right. That's because that's used in everything. Like all forms of web applications require
JavaScript, HTML.
Right. But so a web scraper is like a Python script essentially that will go down a list. Say, for example, you want to find leads on Instagram.
Sure.
There's a web scraper that can go and find like niche hashtags, for example, or find an account that is like similar and you're trying to look at their followers, right? And it goes through every single profile, scrubs their information and saves it to an Excel sheet for you. So now you have a huge list of like leads that could be potentially hot because they're already in your niche and you know it.
Dude, these are things. Sweet.
Yeah, these are.
So is that a way to kind of manipulate your SEO like as well, like in terms of like, because obviously SEO is a little bit different, but based on what people are kind of seeing and or what they're presenting themselves at or like what their interests may be, maybe you can throw some of those in there.
It's kind of a different ballpark. Your SEO, your search engine optimization is going to be like a whole other game to deal with.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot of businesses too who will preach by the idea of you don't even need a web front really to like run your store. So in that case, like search engine optimization is just not even a factor in that whatsoever.
I feel like it's almost being lost and forgotten because I was getting taught that in college when I was in my sales classes. It's like SEO, search engine optimization, was like, because it's all based on keywords, based on what it's trying to funnel you into a certain category of like where your eyes are going based on what you're typing.
I think you might be right about that, and it's kind of has to do with the way that Google has been showing you results lately. So you can go to Google and you can type in a search term, and after about 10 pages, you're going to start to see things that are just shown to you over again. It's not a different link under a different website. It's the same exact link with the same exact title. It's because most people don't go beyond 10 pages. So it's like, what's the point of search engine optimization in general if you can just completely like ignore Google at this point because it gives you bad results and just go to somebody that you know, like on Instagram for the information, who's like an expert at what they do.
I also use, I don't know if you guys use Tor. Like it's a deep web browser, and then also like DuckDuckGo, which is an extension of it. But yeah, that's what I usually look up. It's just, unfortunately, it's just a lot slower. But because you're not tracking your cookies or anything like that, so it's all based on just like trying to act. It's like you can almost like feel its gears turning. It's like, I'm trying to find this for you.
Because it actually has to index the web, like web crawler like was a super old search engine, I remember, and just understanding like the name and what that meant. It's like, oh, it's literally just like a spider crawling, like looking for all these little things, and it comes back to you and it says, all right, here's the report. This is what we found out. Okay. And it's like, now Google is just like, bam, here's the like,
this is what you should be saying.
Our like top 20 vetted sources based on the fact that we don't care what you think, and here's our algorithm.
These guys paid for it, so here you go.
I don't appreciate the algorithm in particular because it very much pigeonholes people into a certain like area of the internet, and you it's hard to escape after that.
But it's forcing people to, it's really getting people to move in other directions. Like a great example is YouTube, people moving over to Rumble like crazy. It's just the toughest part is the user application,
like the experience.
The experience is just like, that's where it's like these platforms just need to get better.
Yeah, the quality of life on Rumble in particular is one of those things that's frustrating to me. As a content creator on YouTube, we've heavily considered, doing our content as the Zoodcast on Rumble. And it's simple quality of life things that make me a little weary of that.
And you see the views, you see like the biggest ones are like maybe 100K views. And then you see on YouTube, you got like 22 million view videos. Just like, it's a different type of optimization.
It's a different user base, and I mean it really depends on the kind of content you're making.
And how many different, in terms of like, if you were to guess, I'm not going to pigeonhole you to it, but in terms of like Rumble versus like YouTube, how many users do you think there's a difference between Rumble and YouTube? It's got to be in the millions.
Well, say like Mr. Beast or PewDiePie or something, they have tens of millions of followers, but yet still that is probably about like 10% of the people that actually watch the videos or the people that are subscribed to him. It's because it's just that big of a platform. Versus Rumble, you have to go to you have to go to this platform for particular reasons, right? It's not
Right.
just a choice that you make. You're like, oh, which platform do I pick as a content creator? It's like,
Yeah.
that one is definitely very much in like a certain realm.
You could
of
do
content.
both, but it's kind of I'm sure it's a pain, but
Yeah. And I think this is why it comes down to like, at the end of the day, there's no real answer to the question that's like, what is the best kind of content? Because it really, really makes a difference on what kind of business that you're trying to operate. You know what I mean?
it's true. I did give you a very general, tough question. So, yeah.
Like for me, for example, in the interest of acquiring music students, it's like I could be making content that demonstrates my value to the public, but it's like, how many of those are actually going to translate to bookings in particular, when I could be just talking to people in the DMs all day and probably see more explicit results
Yeah.
rather than front loading tens of hours of my time into content creation. But I like making content, which is
Right.
why I do it.
Right.
So,
And that's why we do the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I love doing the podcast. And I know you love doing it too, and you as well.
Yeah.
It's just talking to your buddies, and it's something that you talk about what you do and what you love, and then you're talking with your homies.
Absolutely.
Like, to me, this is my favorite form of content because you can get long form and short form.
Yes.
And to me, it's like there's not much more else you need to do on top of depending on where you want to post those.
Yeah.
That's really how it can vary at the end of the day, like you were just talking about.
Yep.
And one of the things that I must stress too is like, I do video editing professionally and I enjoy high quality content, but I think the best kind of content you can be making is valuable content that takes you zero effort to make, because people can relate to that. And immediately it's like, okay, you go on TikTok, for example, most of the videos you see that are really viral are people just recording something on their phone. It's like not even edited
True.
in any
Right.
regard.
That's the majority of mine.
And yeah, I find that there's a lot of power in just like letting go of the need to make something really nice
Yeah.
before showing it to
Right.
the public.
I don't know if I know you're doing coaching, but 3 years ago I had a little bit of coaching, just kind of like one of those like I need to make sure I was doing the right things. Kind of like someone's been in this for a long time. It's nice to like kind of have that like pat on the back, and that's exactly what she was talking about. It was all about don't be all about caring about the fact that you may have messed up. Show a human side of you. The human element is relatable.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you're saying. So if you're always on point, and it almost makes you feel like you're unaccessible to other people, and it's like, oh, he's probably too busy. I don't want to reach out to him. Or
I know, it's a weird,
he's
like,
not even
paradox there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So there's a fine line. You want to be consistent enough to where people know what you're doing and keep in front of their eyes, but also it's like be a human being, because people like to work with humans, not a robotic person that
Right.
feels like they're on point, like Lex Friedman.
So,
I love Lex, don't get me wrong, but he just seems like a guy that's like he's super busy.
yes.
But he doesn't mess up hardly at all. Like,
Right.
he,
I can appreciate that, and that's something that I've been trying to get better at too. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's
I haven't seen you mess up on any of our videos. But yeah.
Well, I do appreciate that. I give a lot of time and care to the things that I edit, even if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not always like
I'm sure you guys can see the reels he helps us out with.
Yeah.
They're
We're very happy with it.
they're
so.
great. The audio's on point. Like the last one, I love the slow. You're zooming in on Chris, and it got more red and red and red.
Yeah, little things,
steam
little
is
things.
like
Yeah,
boiling.
I love
right.
that. It was good, but that's what's cool. It's like it keeps you engaging, but it's also like it's almost like making fun of ourselves in a way, but it's
Yeah.
also just like who cares?
Yeah.
We're presenting information. We're also having fun with it.
Absolutely.
I think as a general rule, be comfortable with competence. Obviously, you can shoot for perfection. You just can't, you can't become obsessed with that. sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Then you'll never be happy.
It's like I know at any given task that I do now in terms of like video editing or music, I'm like I can figure out a way to make it function and
Right.
like at a presentable level. So I'm not concerned with something like that.
Right.
Just yeah,
Nice.
as long as I can get the job done right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and Chris, you live with them, so do you have any questions that you haven't gotten answered already?
Deep dive.
Right. Well, actually,
So what are you doing in the shower in the morning?
Yeah. Oh man, we've got a whole. You guys can't see it, but we've got a whole problem with the shower upstairs. But
Yeah.
that's for another
No,
time.
we're in our penthouse in downtown Sacramento.
Yeah.
It's 3,000 square feet, marble
Sure.
everywhere.
And I freaked it.
It's immaculate.
And I own the building.
You definitely you asked a great question with the content creation. So not gonna name names, but being that I do live with you and you're just one of my best friends to fully disclose that we've known each other since high school. But super grateful to have him as a friend, and just so happened he's a genius video editor, so worked out great. But
He's blushing.
yeah, right. But I would say so not to name names, but I know that you've told me you have had the opportunity to do some editing and some content work with some very big names in the podcasting scene. So my question is, what is, and I think you kind of answered this earlier, but I'd love for you to dive maybe a little deeper of like, what's the difference between that level of content creation at that kind of higher echelon versus the lower levels, and how can people either kind of make that gap, or what would you recommend? What are your thoughts on that?
My biggest thing, and this is not exclusive to content creation, this is running any sort of business in general, is develop systems and document your systems 100%. Because
Ding.
Yep, that's the only way you're going to make it through and have consistency.
Yeah,
and follow things to the T. And it's like, if you need to write yourself a reference document to like on how to remember to do something, do that and have that note up so that you don't make the mistake and cost yourself, 30 minutes, an hour on a project or whatever. It's like, it seems like an inconsequential amount of time.
Right.
I don't know. At the end of the day, that is the struggle.
I'm the same way how I operate. It's like you think I'm writing a full needs list email out every single time to my borrower. Hell no, I got that formatted ready to go based on if you're self-employed, W-2, or if you have any variation of that. I got it on lock because the goal is efficiency and also consistency.
Yeah,
and then
systems
and I'm sure you also agree, and you agree, is mastering the middle. As well. Like,
how do you mean?
Elaborate.
That expression,
so mastering the middle in the sense of the process. So like you get the client and you work with them. It goes with your systems to where you have an implemented system to where regardless of how many people come in, you can adjust to how many people that you're working with, so that system still keeps rolling them out and getting them to the closing table.
Yeah, the scaling is a difficult thing, and this is why the systems are important, because you can't identify flaws in a system that doesn't exist,
right?
And it's impossible to improve unless you can identify flaws and move forward. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that really separates, really high tier content creators, is they have extremely well-established systems and a lot of automation in place to help.
Yeah.
So that's something I've just started doing with the Zoodcast personally, is implementing some sort of automation solutions to reduce the workload for the whole team, hopefully.
You got to. You got the Zood, and then you got us like right before. So you got like, you start your week with a big old workload.
Monday's a fun day.
I love it. Yeah,
but
balls
that's
to the wall for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think this all kind of ties back into our previous conversation, but it sounds like that idea of leverage, of being able to use leverage at the higher levels of any business, really, especially if it's a client service type of business, being able to identify systems and automation and leverage. Today I had a coaching call this morning, and it's funny, I wanted to bring it up earlier because it was a perfect point to where with the content creation, in a way, it's like we're almost playing devil's advocate by saying like, well, not using content creation is actually just as viable, like word of mouth. Well, so there was this group call, and we'll just say that the coach himself is probably one of the better agents in the country, right? Or at least definitely in his state. He's a fully automated solo agent doing probably 200 plus closings a year, right? So so he fantastic, has a full-on coaching business too. But so we were doing a group call where he's talking about talking one-on-one to a student. We're all kind of watching and taking notes. And so this student in particular is having about a GCI a year of about 350,000. He's making about 350,000 a year. He's doing about 2 to 4 closings a month. Okay. Nice. Listings.
That's good.
And so he's still coming back for more information too, which is probably how he got there. Right.
That drive.
But his question was actually something we were kind of talking about today, where he's saying, hey, I'm following the program as is, it's working fantastic. I've got 2 to 4 listings, obviously trying to take it to the next level. But, there's all these things that you've kind of mentioned, or that are other ways to generate business or leads and things like that. And, you know, I haven't really dove into them. So he's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be looking wide or I'm supposed to be going deep, was essentially what his question was, right? And he's saying like, should I focus more on mailers? Should I focus on making content? Should I do this? Should I do that? And really his answer, the coach's answer, was really just like, kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But also at the same time, he's like, what you need is more time now. He's like, at first you had the problem of, and this is, I think, when everyone starts out, it's low money, but high time. So you get that time, you get it to about an equilibrium. And then he's like, now you need to use that resources to get yourself an administrator so he can do all of the listing and the showings and all the things that are, you know, hireable stuff.
But man,
and he's
that
saying,
is a tough step to take.
It is. And that was his problem. But he was making some very good points to convince him, you know. So, you know, he's like, listen, you know, it's like when you're doing just listing appointments and you're signing contracts and you're negotiating on their behalf, it's like, according to my calculations, you're making, you know, almost you know, $400 an hour or something like that doing that. Whereas when you're doing all the other administrative stuff, that's something you can hire for $20-$30 depending on what state you live in, right?
Yeah.
So, but the whole point of where he never once suggested to him, oh, go hop onto YouTube and start making a podcast, right? He said, no, give yourself more time to talk to more people one-on-one, right?
Right.
And so, but that's not to say, I mean, the coach himself does content as well. I mean, it's how I found him and started using his services. So of course he knows it's viable, but
it's powerful.
In that particular instance, he's like, do some of that, and then you'll have some more room to then reassess. But he's like, free yourself up to kind of do what's working, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Especially when you're a younger guy too. And like in this business, it's tough because you're like, you try and put systems in place in order to set up your future business, but we work with people in their homes, which are very nostalgic. There's just a lot of emotions involved. So you can set up your futures as much as possible, but people change their minds all the time in this business. So it's always tough getting past the idea of this isn't like my only deal. Because for me, I have that problem.
yes. Yeah.
I don't like when I close deals.
No,
Isn't that weird?
Really interesting. Yeah.
So don't get me wrong.
See, I've never really.
I love closing deals.
All right.
I love closing deals. But when
It's the post.
it's when I close that deal, especially if I only have like a few others swirling around, I'm like, I feel like I needed to do better within that period of time to get even more. Like I need to keep going more because I'm like, I love the process. I love the hunt.
Yes.
For me, I like it. I've gone to get to the point where I'm just truly loving the process without being too corny.
Right.
But I get that instant wave of anxiety, like this can't be my last one. No, even though that's not the fucking case.
Right.
It's just the way I've been. When you're 100% commission, it's just a different ball game.
I think that's really important too. I mean, because the moment you become complacent or you think that, you know, like, oh, that was a perfect job.
Right.
I didn't, you know, like there was nothing to be improved there. That's when you just stop.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a better thing than good thing, but it's like the one thing I have a tough time doing is taking time for myself.
Me too, man.
Because I always
Yeah.
I like to make a point to be more accessible than the next mortgage guy. Like if he's not answering the phone on a Sunday at 9 a.m., I will. Like it's pretty rough being that available, but it's good that I love what I do. But it's like implementing systems in place, investing in yourself. That's another tough step because it's money.
Yep.
And then also, what was the third one?
Keep that dog in you.
Yeah. Anyway, I
Never let him out.
Yeah, as you can see, keep allowing yourself to take some time for yourself.
There we go. That's a balance for sure.
Yeah,
it's like it's that difference between like grinding hard, really like trying to improve yourself, get better. But then there are those times where it's like, man, you definitely can burn yourself out the fastest doing that, and really trying to negotiate with yourself and finding that balance of like, okay, I need to take a break, reassess, reflect, but not for too long, right? So it's just like it's a like, constant. That in itself is something that you get better at, right? Learning 100%. Your own individual, like what's my time I need to recharge and how long can I go?
And also we need to go on business trips, because guess what? When you go on vacation, I like to say business trips because everything's a business trip. But
if you're in business,
if you're going on vacation, that's when you start getting phone calls. Everyone knows. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like when
Cliche.
you are going away, doing something fun, that's how you get your business going.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of realtors do that just to keep their phone going.
I thought you
Yeah.
meant just because it's like, man, I leave and suddenly shit hits the fan.
That's how it
That
works.
too.
Yeah.
That's how we're every time.
Everybody's
that
like,
I-
oh my God, how do you do this?
But no, to your point, it's like it's almost like when you're not so worried about it, or at least you finally find a moment of just like it's just not on my mind right now. I'm just enjoying the moment, doing this, doing that, something totally
weird.
different,
There's
and then
something in
just
the
like
universe
bring.
that-
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Email, text, whatever.
It's like, hey, Chris, I have $1 million cash budget. Would you like to help me? I'm in Cancun.
yeah, right.
I'll be back in 7 days. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
I've got Dan, my neighbor down the street.
Yeah.
Shit.
That-
All right.
I might take that a little differently, but
No, I would think that if he called you directly, I'm sure you could wait a little bit.
yeah, right.
We need them AI generated voicemails.
Yeah, that's a
There
Yep,
we go.
this
Oh,
is
that's a
Dan.
nugget.
Dan
Write that down.
speaking.
Yeah,
that's
right.
another conversation. Yeah, I mean, do you
Bad
have-
service got to go.
Yeah,
Genius.
Yeah, right. That reminds me of like those dumb voicemails where they'll say hello.
oh my god, those piss me off.
Dude, I feel robbed every time
I
I,
know.
call those people.
They're like, hello.
And you're
Hello?
like, hey, this
just
is-
kidding.
Yeah,
I'm
hey,
not
this
here
is-
right now. It's like I want to throw my phone against my wall.
Like, I'm in Cancun, mother. You thought.
I'm in Cancun, motherfucker. But speaking of AI, how do you think that's gonna?
Oh, that's a good one.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
The AI. I have fears and concerns about the AI.
Yeah, I do too.
We all do.
They're not as justified, I think, as most people would like to make them out to be. For example, one of the reels you sent me was of what is it, Autopod, which is a new plugin that somebody wrote for Adobe Premiere Pro
right.
that sections up your podcast by AI by determining who is speaking and making cuts. I'm like, well, that's super cool, and a lot of the times it can definitely like expedite part of the process. But I feel like with a lot of these tools, they only really give you like a baseline to work with.
Because then you have to go in and make your own tweaks. I feel like at least where we're at right now.
Yeah. And it's not just with the podcasting and the video editing stuff. For example, I was
Yeah.
trying to write a Python script for automating one of the processes we do for the Zoodcast.
Sure.
And the point of the script was to take a video and then grab 100 evenly distributed screenshots throughout the length of the video, just to grab like reaction shots of people's faces, right?
Oh,
To make it
okay.
easier to make thumbnails. And I spent probably 6 to 8 hours arguing with ChatGPT trying to get this thing to work. And
Oh,
I finally got it to work, but it didn't have the
You just
features
kept
that I
having to
quite
change the
wanted.
prompt, kept having to change the prompt.
I'm
or-
like, this is good enough. It works well enough. I don't
like,
need
it's
the
okay.
multi-threading. I don't need the GPU like processing.
like I probably could have done it better myself if I just did it myself from the jump.
yeah, but then I'd have to actually teach myself how to use Python properly.
Oh, got it. Never mind. so AI,
That's why that's why you have to use the AI. Yeah.
I'm experienced enough of a programmer to debug and know the syntax and the sort of how things are constructed to be able to identify a problem, but I don't necessarily know all the like specific implementations of like every language, which is why AI is super useful.
Right. Yeah.
'Cause
I do like
have the encyclopedia
ChatGPT.
right there.
ChatGPT helps with content creation ideas, and it also helps with especially on the real estate side. The first thing I thought was like listing descriptions. That was
Yeah.
the first thing I thought.
Oh,
was
yeah.
that, and I actually
go-to.
I helped my mom on a listing. I helped my mom with her listing description on one of her previous listed properties. I was like, "Have you ever heard of ChatGPT?" And she's like, "Obviously, she has not." And and then I showed it to her. Well, actually, I took a look at her. I took a look at the property, and it was very, very pretty. And I was like, "Okay, Mom, give me the highlights." And she's like, "I can't remember exactly. Like 4 beds, stunning open floor plan, flat usable space, and like pretty much all the highlights." Just saying, like, make an amazing listing description that will get agents and buyers interested based on these few highlights. And then it was. It's just, and I don't even tell my mom what I'm doing, and then I say it out loud. I was like, "So what about this? Blah 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 blah." And she's like, did you just come up with that's amazing? And I'm like, no, let's check this out because this might help you down the road. But it's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild because it's like, it's just, for me, it's just a time saver because sometimes like, I think a good majority of what we do, it needs a human element, but there's some things where it's very busy work. It's like,
yes.
Yeah.
You know,
like copywriters, y'all are screwed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was about to just say that the copy business is
like, bro,
because that was a big thing for the last, like, that was a COVID job, right? That came up and people were making good money doing it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but yeah, find another career.
Like before
it's not looking good.
No.
Before the Zoodcast, I was working in retail, writing copy as a social media manager. So
Oh, really?
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't have to do that anymore.
No.
Like, well, I mean, obviously, we still write all of our own posts.
That's right. Did
No, I'm kidding.
you hear about that? I think you went to like UCLA or in California, and ChatGPT, like it was notorious for kids using it for essays and stuff like that. But they changed the prompts where it never was the same, so students coordinated. But there was a kid that literally created a way to detect ChatGPT, and I'm like,
that's crazy.
You're an asshole. Like, you're a fucking asshole. Like you're literally like even
ruining
bigger.
it.
It's like,
for us
come on.
cheaters.
Hey, ChatGPT, learn yourself real quick. That's not a question you want to be asking the AI.
Yeah,
We're like, how do we make AI that can detect other AI?
Yeah.
It's like there's a level of self-awareness there that I think is scary.
I know.
Yeah,
right?
you're like,
You're like,
no,
no, that's one of ours actually. Yeah, that's that.
They're thinking
that's
about
not human.
implementing
Like,
AI into like Sims and already in like into video games.
Yeah.
That's going to be really weird because if it gets to a point of certain intelligence and they start questioning their own existence within the actual video game, they're like, Sam, what am I? How, like, where did I come from? Like, and then their phone of the Big Bang is turning on the console.
ChatGPT is definitely one of the coolest, most accessible, I think, to the common person.
It just has obvious utility for the meantime because it's basic. It's not too crazy.
Mostly for its copy potential, I think, more than anything. Or at least that's what I'm using it for, probably what you're using it for. And I think, me personally, it's like I've always been a very list oriented, very like I like to like if I have something kind of organized, it helps me tackle it a little better. So it's I love the way it just my go-to prompt is give me 5 things of blank. Give me a list of the best 5 blank, or give me 5 ideas here. Give me 6 ideas here.
That's what's
and then
nice.
It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's just like okay.
And
but
then you can change the prompt to something that you're like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And then you can kind of like determine it from there.
The real interesting thing about it too is and the thought I've had on is like the power is not really in the AI itself, but it's like it's in how you formulate the question. If your question is formulated well enough, then you kind of get what you're looking for, right? But I love the process of like going through a few
because it makes you still think because you're trying to manipulate the prompt where it's something that you want yourself to be presenting to other people if you're going to be posting it online or a description for YouTube or something like that.
Right. It's almost like this genie where it's like it gives you exactly what you want, but you have to know exactly what you want. Like you can't if it's as specific as it can possibly be. So if you're just like
as kind of a callback to what I was talking about earlier, I think it's not just like what you ask it, but how you're using the information that you get from it, right? So there's a big trend right now of YouTube automated cash cow channels, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this.
I've kind of seen a little glimpses about
fully
it.
automated channels, and
that's wild.
I came across a video
stuff.
where somebody was using, once again, Python to edit videos without even using a nonlinear editor like DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, and it's fully based on code lines and API. And they make these Minecraft videos that you see where people are jumping along on it like a jumping puzzle while there's like an Ask Reddit thing being read to you by an AI voice. Those aren't made by humans at all. Like they don't even touch those channels. Like it's just fully automated by a robot, right? So if you can use
set that kind of shit up.
It's scripting and API knowledge. So you use a basic framework, and then they have an API, which is an application programming interface, which is their own collection, their own library of commands they've built to interface with this piece of code. And all you got to do is plug it in and supply it with the proper data. and
Wow.
you're
That is wild.
So if you can use
Self-generating
ChatGPT,
videos.
for example, to be like, all right, give me a top 10 video that is based off of Google Trends trending topics right now.
Right.
It'll give you a top 10 list video and you go, cool, now write me an itemized 10-minute script for each one of those videos. Cool. Now hire me a guy on Fiverr to proofread and edit these to make sure they're, you know, sensibly readable by a human and performable by a reader. Now go and hire me a voice actor to, you know, to actually read the
Is it
script.
at that point now?
Well, it's like you don't even need a voice actor anymore. You can go to some of these
Right.
AI services that
I was gonna
are
say,
speech
that's
synthesizers.
another
I
thing
saved
that's
the reel
almost-
based on
yeah.
like that you can actually like transcribe audio just by that. Actually, I want to put a PSA out there. They've been doing this with they've been calling people acting like they're kidnapping their child.
Oh, yeah.
Or trying to claim sort of like ransom and demanding some sort of money.
Yeah.
There's an example. I saved the video. I'll show you guys afterwards. But it was a mom got a call from a voice. She said, it was my daughter. It was undisputable. It was my daughter saying that heard someone in the back, like an echo, like saying like, put your hands on the ground. Like you're coming with me. Like things that are like,
Wow.
you're scared to death that your daughter is being kidnapped by some random dude or woman, most likely a weird guy. Right. So yeah, but then her daughter comes down the stairs like, hey mom, what's going on?
And
It's
she's
like-
like, what?
It's like, what the fuck? So this is just a PSA to put it out there. Have a safe word with your family. Seriously, because the AI, they're not to that point yet. Unless they're actually, until we have those freaking chips in our head, they can't access that yet. They can only
wild
go
to
based
think
off
about.
of a sample and then articulate words from there based on another script they want to be able to write from that voice recording. But isn't that crazy?
That's
We're already
so
at
wild
that
to me.
point, and that's scary, man. It's like, you know, that's going to be used towards elderly people. You just fucking know it.
Oh, that's the main target,
yeah,
unfortunately.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what,
biggest victims of phone-based scams.
and that's one of the reasons why my family developed a safe word. We actually got it from my grandma, and she's gotten called tons of times by these guys claiming to be like her grandson, stuff like that. And there was one convincing one a while ago, but she had a safe word involved, and she's like asked him that, hung up the phone immediately.
Of course.
So the safe word's a big thing, and it's super simple. Just think of a word that's very specific to your family, and your family would
Right.
know only. But
my safe word is chicken nuggies.
chicken nuggets. Mine is ranch. No,
Ranch dressing.
ranch dressing. Oh, I love ranch. But I guess I kind of wanted to end it with you
Sure.
asking, do you have any questions from a person that your knowledge is based on editing, music production, pretty much very technology based type of expertise? Do you have any questions for me or Chris on something that I know you've been behind the camera, heard about us talking a lot of stuff, but a few people that have reached out and said that, do you mind having some questions out there that are more on the basic side? And I'm like, absolutely. I made tons of videos in the past about the more of the basic stuff, but I'm curious, do you have any thoughts or questions?
I'm curious, particularly on the longevity of the real estate market in general, because there's this whole like globalist push, right, for people to not own any of the things that
To
they
rent.
engage with,
Yeah.
and to be purely renters. And it seems like people are engaging more with that now than ever, especially with difficult economic times. So I'm curious, how do you see the longevity of this going when it seems like people's financial literacy seems to be declining as
That's a
far as
really
the grand
good
scale
question.
goes? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Very well formulated.
yeah, I would say we're good for the next decade. And the reason why I say that is because I think we're going to be good for a while, because when you mess with people's assets, you mess with their money, you mess with their health, you mess with their food, that's when they revolt.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, for instance, people are always wanting to invest into real estate, but the problem I know you're talking about is the gatekeeping of the financial freedom and ability to do so, because
the
it's
barrier seems like it's
like,
climbs
because
for
you
people,
got to be
right?
making like
Yeah.
$100K on your own to buy a $500,000 home, which is, that's not everybody. That's like,
That's not an easy task for a lot of people. Yeah.
so I understand that, but when it comes to the idea of you can have like up to 6 borrowers on one loan, you can in other words, you can add more people's income in, more people in, as long as their credit's not offsetting their point to where they're out of qualifying. And the simplicity of knowing that it's one of the few ways to truly own, I know, taxes, but still, you have your homestead. That's your home. And there's a finite amount. There's only one earth. And that alone, that finite value, it carries with so many people. It's just such a tried and true, and it's been instilled for us for so long. And that's like one of the reasons why, like, I don't know if AI is a good example, but AI is kind of just like so wacky for so many people because it's so new and we don't really know what the long-term application is for it. But with real estate, it's the complete opposite. We've had a long time of knowing how it can affect people, generational wealth, all the utility it brings. So it's kind of the opposite effect of people are like, I feel it's tougher to get into a home, but there's also other places where you can get, like, if you had a $50,000 salary, you can buy in other states. California, we're just localized to a really, really high market price.
Yes.
So in a sense, would you say that in the long run, if financial literacy becomes a significant problem, would the real estate market simply just become more concentrated?
Yeah, I think
the majority of it would go into the hands of fewer and fewer people and corporations, and that's kind of been the case for a while now. I mean, that's always been the case where corporations, like we were just talking about this in the last episode, where places like BlackRock and all of those syndicates are all gearing up to buy a whole bunch of real estate, according to some data. But I think that almost goes to show you where it's like if a giant corporation worth billions and billions of, I think aren't they worth like $1 trillion or something like that? Yeah.
They're holding, I mean, Blackstone, BlackRock holds, I think, around 10 trillion in total assets.
Wow. Yeah. So it goes to show you that if something with that much pull is going towards real estate in a huge way, that they definitely have some faith in it, in a sense. So,
and it also goes back to your word of mouth, where when you talk to Uncle Jimmy and said that I just sold my home and I made this amount of money, or I'm so happy in this neighborhood, you got to come over here and check it out. That's really big when it comes to Sun City. People are like, you got to come here. The community's awesome. I made so many friends here.
Right.
As long as the human element stays and AI doesn't mess with that too much. And the cool thing with the accessibility, the tough part about the knowledge factor in financial literacy is that there's a lot of people preaching good content and good information, but there's been multiple instances on the loan side where I'm like, you are saying the wrong thing. You were preaching the wrong information. So the problem, like, I don't know if I brought this up on the podcast, but we kind of live in a world where you can figure out a way to make yourself right because there's so much information out there. I watched a fantastic video. He's just talking about, like, you may have seen it, about the coffee and the blindness.
Yeah, the confirmation bias.
I think we did talk about
coffee makes you blind. Coffee cures your eyesight.
No matter you can find one article to where you can say that. You could probably find an article that says that real estate makes you poor.
Yeah.
But then you could also find a lot saying, like, how to build generational wealth with real estate. So at the end of the day, that's where talking to people and the word of mouth aspect of saying, like, oh, he did that, I can do that as well. And simple emotions going back and forth. And the people want to make money.
Yeah.
Majority of people want to make good money, and the most tried and true in our economic system that we've created is, in fact, real estate and property.
I do have another follow-up, actually.
Sure.
So in the long term, with the potential of the entire market being consolidated to an even more exclusive financial echelon, how do you think the Chinese Communist Party buying up half of our real estate is going to affect that for you guys in particular?
That's a good question. We might have to brush up on our Chinese.
Yeah.
But man,
don't know.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things going on with that, because There's, I mean, I mentioned in the last one talking about BRICS, how they're slowly establishing their own form of currency so they can trade on their own behalf without having to rely on the the U.S. dollar as the central world currency. And then there's a lot of things going on worldwide. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that there's a bunch of Chinese ships that's sitting in the sea around Taiwan.
Oh yeah,
just chilling.
Yep.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
And then obviously we have Russia and Ukraine. So
they're gonna need some salsa for all the chips that they're about to get.
yeah. So that's the thing where like it's hard to articulate how that will be, because at that point the US dollar will no longer be something of value to where it is currently right now. So for me to actually explain what that could look like for us is that, well, I'm probably going to be dealing in yen. And then I'm also probably going to have to learn how to speak Chinese, and also probably there's not going to be a free market economy. So there's going to be a lot more regulation in place and a lot more like China. There's only certain classes that can actually purchase real estate. I'm pretty sure you have to be in the top like 10%. Don't quote me, but like it's a communist situation to where
social credit,
right?
You know, star social credit situation.
Yeah, I think that if that were to like, I think the next level of like just controlling is gonna be digital currency, where they can pretty much track our currency, what we buy, carbon, like our carbon footprint. You can't go on the plane because you use too much gas. You can't turn on your car, or you can't go get gas, et cetera, et cetera. And then also a social credit score, which China already has that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And their detecting system for facial recognition is insane.
Oh,
they'll take money. They'll take money out of your account if you jaywalk.
They don't need to see your face.
They don't even need to see you.
Okay.
No,
this is how crazy the tech is. They don't need to see your face at all.
Okay.
They rate your gait.
Say that one more time.
They gait rate you. They okay. Now let me explain.
GATERAT.
That's just intrusive and rude.
Their AI is so good that it detected that every single person on the planet has a unique walk that they do. It's like a fingerprint.
It's a body language.
So your literal gait, the way you carry your body as you move
I'm
through
going
the
to start
world.
walking with some big old hips. I'm just going to be like,
yeah, every time you're in a camera, you gotta throw it off.
Yeah,
it's going to go like this.
Fucking the gait rating, man. I'm sorry.
It's going to rock around like this. Like, okay, all right, okay. Just start skipping all over the place.
Throw the algorithm.
I'm not paying that ticket.
Yeah.
I'm jaywalking.
But I heard like in China, like when you jaywalk, because there's so many people in that country, they'll just take money straight out of your account because they have access to it. Like because if it's a world currency and it's digital, it's digitized. There's also a certain amount of, I don't know if you heard in was it Uganda? I think it may have been Uganda, but there's a country in Africa that essentially they switched to a full digital currency, and it's been in shambles. And there's only what they did to start was that there's only a certain amount of cash that can be withdrawn. And then from there, it just went downhill fast.
I'm sure.
Super bad.
They had no implementation plan ready for this at all.
Absolutely not. And people started rioting. They started it got really, but
just
we don't hear about
guess.
this stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm scared about with the digital currency and the China aspect. I mean, I think there's a few big steps that have to happen before China comes into our territory that hard. And I think China wouldn't do it alone. When shit really hits the fan, the same rule applies to like the whole gender idea.
Yeah.
Sorry,
How do you
political, but let's be honest, when shit really hits the fan and things, if there were troops in the United States, the third wave feminist movement goes away. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, the majority of women I talk to, they don't want to be soldiers. No. And they don't want to be forced to do so, which we would be in the position to be forced to do so.
Yes.
So it's like you want to be that way, but only on your own convenience.
Yeah. Ultimately, as long I feel like a lot of people and myself included with certain things, you wait until the absolute most consequence until changing, you
Right.
know, or deciding or even discovering what your ultimate like truth is at the very core. And
Yeah,
I
'cause-
think a lot of times it does take an extremely traumatic series of events to unravel.
Because if you were by yourself as a small woman, say your parents were across the country, you're a small woman by yourself in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
who would you gravitate towards first for survival?
Probably people that are like me.
That are
Right.
like you?
Yeah. Like people who can relate to the situation. You know what I mean?
But if shit really hits the fan, things are chaotic. Who are you going to try and gravitate towards if you had one person to choose? The biggest
Absolutely.
fucking man you could possibly find.
Absolutely fucking nobody. Me. Like
You
that's
would?
that's who I would trust is me.
Interesting.
At the end of the
Okay.
day, like if I have problems, and this is something I think isn't necessarily like a problem with asking for help or something like that, but I will take 100% responsibility for anything that has happened to me, even if it's not my fault. I'm like, these are the circumstances I'm in, and no matter what happens, at the end of the day, I have to figure out how to continue being alive.
I guess
Because,
it's tough if I'm talking to you as like I guess I'm trying to put yourself into yourself as like a small woman. Like where
Can't do it.
Well-
yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I'm
Too
too
big
big
of a man.
I'm too big, bro.
But yeah, I tend
I get what you're saying though. I mean, even as like even not being a small woman, being a fairly at least average to tallish sized man, I'd say
I
you know,
wanna
it's like
gravitate towards
if
some
shit
savages.
Dude, yeah, if shit really hits the fan, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go towards anyone that I deem is competent in the situation.
Yeah,
for if it's a
prepared.
combat situation, if it's a medical emergency situation, if it's a natural hazard, you know, however crazy we're talking here.
To me,
It's like
there's
I would go towards whoever could help in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Whoever's in arm's reach at least,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which most service people, I would say, our majority statistically are men.
Yeah,
Yes, on that front of being
Right.
first responder type. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I guess the first thing when I think about that situation, if we had boots on the ground soldiers like invading
Right.
the United States, I think about Ukraine because the Ukrainian men under the age of 65, they all had to stay back, and all the women were able to go.
Yes.
They're going to Stockholm, they're going to Canada, like they're going to places that have zero conflict whatsoever. But all the men, all from 18 to 65, all had to stay.
Wild. Yeah.
But as you can see, women weren't fighting to stay back. Like I want to fight with them.
Yeah.
Probably not most of them. I'll tell you that.
No, definitely a
not.
different culture too.
And that's
Way
something
different.
that
Yeah.
as, as
yeah.
men we want to protect our women. That's because they're special beings. It's not like we look down on you that you can't do those things. It's like
Yeah,
you
you're
can
like,
do
shit's
things that
getting
we can't do,
bad.
and
Get
you-
out of here,
Yeah,
please. We don't want to see you
exactly.
get hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need you,
We'll
so
take the
please.
bullet because
Yeah,
we
right.
cannot bear to see you take the bullet. That's kind of
Yes.
the idea behind it.
Yeah, in that kind of situation, it's explicitly hard to know who to trust. You know what I mean?
So
It's like-
yeah,
For sure.
It's like I can trust people with like all manner of things down to my like most private secrets or whatever. But it's like if it comes down to it and like somebody, you know, is holding you against your will or like hostage or some sort of thing like that, it's like you got to trust people not to break.
yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
that's a lot to ask.
That is
That's
Yeah.
so
that
much to
is-
ask of
yeah.
people. Like,
It's like you can only really ask that of yourself because
Yeah.
you're the only
Yeah.
one that you can control.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where that sort of line of thought comes from for me.
I
But,
guess
mean,
my first thing when I think of like things really hit the fan is that I would want to gravitate towards my family because we were pretty prepared people.
Yeah.
And we know what to do. We know how to hunt. We know how to fish. We know how to take care of things. So that's probably who I'd naturally gravitate towards. So I gravitate towards yourself. You'd just be a lone wolf out there.
like all that
You have to
stuff.
be.
Like I did some rather intense survival training in the past, so
okay.
I know I can survive off of the land with absolutely nothing. Like
That's a good skill. You'd be
Yeah.
in high demand.
yeah, that's why I'm like,
exactly.
Can I eat this flower? No, that'll kill you. Thank you, Robert.
hey, let me join your post-apocalyptic crew, bro. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I got
squat
spikes
up,
on
bro.
my shoulders.
Hey, I know some boys up in the mountains.
Sawed off this shotgun to look cool. It has no shells. I'm all out of shells.
Who
But
would you go to? Who would you gravitate towards if shit hit the fan?
oh man, I'm gonna be honest. My survival skills are probably not the best, but same. I'd probably at least. I'd
got
probably
you, bro. Come to
gravitate
our
toward.
house.
Yeah, I'll probably go to your house, but no, I definitely go to my family, make sure they're okay, do what I can to kind of help support that unit, like mom, dad, stepdad, brother, little sister,
To
all
enter,
that.
you just
All
gotta
that.
bring a can of beans.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you'll be all right. Just keep a copy of Hatchet in your back pocket in case you get lost.
There you go. I'm just imagining Chris in like downtown Sacramento. It's desolate. He's just like, he's got like 2 hatchets. Like, where's my family?
I've been on this island for 20 weeks.
I'll
I've
find
been
him.
alone for 20 hours.
That's way too long.
Oh man, I did not realize we're gonna get that. Sorry, I kind of blew that one up a little bit, but
That's okay.
yeah. At the end of the day, we love everybody. I love men and women,
Of course.
and I think we both both have our strengths. We both have our weaknesses. I think that's why we make such good teams in this world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Boom.
The yin and the yang.
I just resolved my nonsense from earlier.
Just tied it up in a tiny bow. There you go.
Retroactive continuity.
It's trite.
Well, Bobby, thanks for coming on and in front of the frame instead of
Yeah.
behind the frame, which you
Thanks
set
for
it
the
up
dog.
anyways. But hey,
Don't leave me hanging.
bam!
Appreciate you.
All right, guys.
Of course,
Well,
man. I think we're
anything
done.
else?
Nope.
No.
Episode
All right.
10 in the books.
There it is, guys. Until 11.
See you on the next one, guys. Sweet.
Sweet.